And there we were standing on the same wooden floors that Mozart stood where Don Giovanni had its world premiere 200 years ago.
Hi, folks, and welcome to In Conversation, the series where we interview the musicians, artists, and producers connected to the concerts that we do. I'm Nicholas Arnold, the Senior Marketing Manager at Glatz Concerts. My guest for this interview, I am super excited about. He is a veteran of the entertainment industry, an established film producer, and the founder of Teatro della Pace Films. His credits in various producing roles include Goya's Ghost with Natalie Portman, The Unbearable Lightness of Being with Daniel Day-Lewis, The English Patient with Ralph Fiennes, and The Talented Mr. Ripley with Matt Damon. His first film, however, was a family affair with his uncle, renowned producer Saul Zaentz, and I am of course talking about 1984's 8-time Academy Award winner, Amadeus. Paul Zaentz, thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Oh, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
So I want to go back. I know the beginning of your career, you studied law, and it was your uncle, Saul, who's a very famous film producer, filmmaker, music industry veteran. He was the one that kind of suggested that you come over to the film side of things. What was it about the film industry, or what was it about his offer that intrigued you? And then what is it about film that has kept you in this career for so long, ever since?
When I was in school, I was supposed to go work for a couple of friends of mine after I graduated Wharton, but their record company in New York went bankrupt just before graduation, and they suggested law school. And they wouldn't have been bankrupt if they had a decent attorney. So I went to law school. They started a second company out in LA. I'm graduating law school, and the financing was pulled for the second company. So I got a job in New York, and lo and behold, a couple of days later, my uncle calls me up and said, we're looking for a third lawyer. And I said, look, I've never wanted to be a lawyer. I wasn't. And he said, well, come on out. I know you love films, and we're starting to make films. And I started going to film sets around the Bay Area and going to lectures and symposiums down in LA. And I told him, films is where I want to be. I guess it was 1981. He said, okay, we're doing a movie. Come on, the Czechoslovakia at the time, and let's go find locations. So Amadeus was my first dive into the film business.
And what a film for that to be your first, because it is on such a grand scale and it's so epic. And I have to read the list of hats that you wore, because you did so so much. First of all, it was shot on location in Prague, what an amazing, again, incredible locations to be at. But you were in charge of, or at least worked on the budgets, accommodation and travel, the shipping of dailies. So for those who don't know, that's literally the daily footage that's going out and being reviewed. Your father, a retired restaurateur, was the caterer on set. You helped him out with that. So what?
No, let me interrupt.
Yeah, please.
He was everyone's favorite on the crew. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
back in Prague in 82 and 83, we had to send a truck to West Germany twice a week to get fruit and vegetables because they didn't exist in Prague, only root vegetables. So he would buy extra, and 15 of us were living in the same hotel, and he would give us fruit to bring back to our room.
And he kept everyone, like, I know you have a little anecdote story of Tom Hulse was so well fed, especially at the time that he's supposed to look
Yeah, yeah.
ill and malnourished.
The costume department came to me and said, would you please talk to Tom about stop eating too much, because he's supposed to be dying and his costumes don't fit.
First of all, I just want to know what was it like being on that film set for you as your first film, or being around that crew. But then also, just with everything I mentioned and that you mentioned, it seemed like such a tight-knit kind of family affair, really.
It was almost like being back in college. You're a group together for a period of 8 months of pre-production and filming. The experience of making the film was amazing. What a camaraderie between the the crew and the cast.
You folks shot at the Estates Theater. You filmed the Don Giovanni sequence there, and that,
Yeah.
for those who don't know, that is the actual spot where Mozart premiered that work
Yeah.
in the 1700s. For that location, but also for some of the others, what was it like stepping foot in the actual spots where?
Well, at that time, it was called the Till Theater. They changed it back to the Estates Theater, which I think was the original name. And there we were standing on the same wooden floors that Mozart stood, where Don Giovanni had its world premiere 200 years ago. It got goosebumps. But one of the most amazing things in my film career happened in that spot. We were going to be filming there on July 4th, set with about 700 Czech extras, all dressed up in the costumes. Of course, there was going to be music because we were filming an opera. And when Milos would yell playback, the Mozart's music would be thundering out of all the speakers. Well, a couple of the English people in the crew came to me and said, Paul, we'd like to do something as a surprise on July 4th. We're going to rig up a large American flag on the top of the stage. And when Milos yells playback, we're going to unfurl the flag and the Star-Spangled Banner is going to be played. And I said, sure, great. There's only about 5 of us that knew about this. And as soon as Milos yelled playback, that flag dropped. The Czechs extra 700 stood up for the Star-Spangled Banner.
What an incredible experience that would have been, both things that you mentioned, like just being in that space, but then having a moment like that again.
Yeah.
Really highlights how close or how much everybody cared for, even in large numbers.
Yeah.
This is the 40th anniversary. I know last year you kind of celebrated the 40 years of, or a few years ago, the 40 years of filming.
Yeah, last April.
Last April.
Yeah.
And then 2025 would be 40 years that it's won all of its Oscars. So we've got a few years of celebration here. Why do you think it stood the test of time? I see comments of people being like, I wore out the VHS tape. I've watched it so many times. What is it about Amadeus that lasts this long?
Well, I think Milos Forman is just a brilliant filmmaker. I mean, the other movie that our company did with him, Cuckoo's Nest, it's the same thing. And they're just timely. You watch them, they could have been made last year, both films.
Yeah, the themes on both, I think, are very relevant.
Yeah.
Every generation, right? Yeah.
Although whereas Cuckoo's Nest could be remade today, I think it would be much too expensive to remake Amadeus today.
And then lastly, we were just talking before recording there about your experience of you've seen Amadeus live. That's what we are producing a few times this year. You've seen it a handful of times. What is that experience like? And for the uninitiated who are going to see it for the first time, what can they expect?
You realize how professional these musicians are. And the orchestras are from wherever city it's playing in, and you don't miss a beat. I mean, in the choir, there are 2 versions of Amadeus. There's the one that released in 1984, and then the 2001 Warner Brothers asked if there's some other scenes that could be put in. So Milos and Saul put in 4 more scenes, added 22 minutes. But Milos was horrified that Warner Brothers called it the director's cut. In 1984, there were no time limits on the movie he could release. So that is his director's cut. But Amadeus Live, Aphex, the company that put it together, said we can't do the 3-hour version. The musicians can't just play for that long. And so they did their best to restore the original. And so that's what the audience will be seeing, which, in my opinion, the opinion of most people, is by far the better version. Nothing wrong with a 3-hour one, but for me,
it's what Milos intended. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Paul, thank you so much for chatting with me today, taking the time. I will say this, you are always welcome when we put on Amadeus Live, wherever we do it. I know you've seen it a bunch. Thank you so much. And really, this was a great conversation. It's so cool to get the behind the scenes on this.
Thank you. No, it's my pleasure.